time to take a look at Google Documents spreadsheets. Let's go ahead and create a brand new one here. Go up to the New button up in the corner. Grab the spreadsheet this time, not the form. Form has that same. And what's going to happen is a spreadsheet's going to load here, and it's going to look just like an Excel form where you have columns across the top and rows along the left-hand side, one through as many as you want. What you can do with a spreadsheet is add in information. Spreadsheets really come alive, obviously, when you start using numbers and you try and do calculations or you use formulas. If you know anything about Excel or Open Office spreadsheets, you already know that formulas can be super powerful. This is something that you would obviously use with a math class, or you could use this to categorize things into graphical categories. You can certainly make graphs with the spreadsheet also. Let's just quickly make one here. We'll make up some names. We'll move down the list here. When you hit enter, it moves into the cell beneath. Jim, Tim, John, and Max. Let's say you were playing a stock market game. You could actually have them update using these CRPs. In this case, it's not necessarily a research project, but it's a collaborative research presentation. It's a collaborative research presentation of sorts. In other words, the students have done the research, they're using the stock market game, and they are doing a presentation of it to the entire class all at the same time. All they have to do is insert their weekly stock value. Okay? So maybe in column A you have the actual ticker symbol of what company each individual is going with. So the first one's got AIG, next one's got some Google, next one's got Toyota, and we have Max here, has some Time Warner Cable, whatever it is. And you could say week 1. If you press the right arrow on your keyboard, your cursor or your focus will jump to the right into the next cell. Week 3. For instance, Jim here can put that his stock was worth $20.23 week 1. Tim's was worth $308.50 basically. There we go. In week 1, you could then figure out that they lost about $4 here. Now you get the picture here. I could go on week by week. And then when I'm finished, I could certainly use a formula on the bottom, which the teacher could actually write the formula, and all the students have to do is put their input in there, but they actually get to watch how things change real time as they put the information in. Watch this. I'll put the formula, the sum, equals the sum of, and then I highlight this text right here, those 4 cells, and I close the parentheses and I hit enter. So you see that it says equals, and then it says sums, open parentheses, and then you select the cells that you want to summate, and you close the parentheses and you hit enter. And you should find out that the grand total right there was $488. So that's what the whole team green or whatever you would want to call them, would be worth, $488. I hope that you can sort of start to see the benefit of this. So for instance, next week you could find out that the class was actually, they may have lost $20 as a team or gained $300 as a team. And then you could write a new formula about the difference in, and the students could actually follow how all this works. They could see how the stock market really works, and they may or may not even need to write the formulas to be able to do this. You certainly could show that to them if they were a little bit older or you thought that they could follow along that way. But they could not only learn how the stock market works, but they could really interact with this form together as a group, and you could interact together as a class with this. Let me just show you a few other things within Google Docs spreadsheet so that you know how to format things. If I take these cells right here, these are going to be my totals down here. So I actually want to color them a little bit differently. I highlight them in blue by left clicking, just dragging to highlight them, and then I can go here and pick a color that I want to highlight them with. So now all my cells should be this little light orange color. There's a whole bunch of other things that you could do. You could take these cells right here on the bottom, highlight them all. Once again, those are my totals, so I actually want to put a little border around them. If If I click on this, I can pick whether I want borders around the outside, inside, a whole bunch of different options. Now I'm finished with this, except for that I want to put the word total right here. There we are. And the very last thing that I want to show you that I haven't shown you yet, this stands true for Google Docs presentations, spreadsheets, documents, and forms. I haven't taught you about forms, but you should have watched a video about forms already. But if you do all of those different things, you can follow who has edited what. For instance, let me just take a look at the revision history in this very quickly, and then we'll open something else. Revision history here says, and makes me name this first, I'll just call it stock. In this case, in the spreadsheet, you actually see highlighted, which is why it says highlighted right over here on the right hand side. You actually see that it's highlighted all the new things that were created by Do4Com at 4:39 p.m. It says it right there. And if I click on this, I can see all the different revisions. At 4:33 I made revisions, at 4:39 I made revisions. This thing just takes snapshots every about 15 seconds or so to see who has made or who has revised what. And then it will highlight things in colors. And so you can actually go back and find out exactly who revised or had their input on what dates and what time. So if Jim didn't update his weekly stock prices until Saturday, but the assignment said he was supposed to do it on Friday, you would actually know about it. Let's take a look at one more document so you can see how the revision history works on some of these things. This time we're going to take a look at the revision history of this presentation that was created that I shared with a bunch of people. You can see there are approximately 5 to 10 slides here. And these slides were created by or modified by the students as I actually taught a lesson. And so I can say who actually made these revisions, so I can figure out whether or not spelling mistakes, so on and so forth, should be attributed to certain individuals by just checking File, Revision History again. And the revision history should take me in here and show me all the revisions. Technically speaking, according to Google Docs, there were 117 revisions on this document. A lot of those revisions were tiny little typing errors where someone went back and just retyped a little section. Let's say they misspelled a word and had to retype it. Google actually tracks just about every little nuance of what somebody does in here. So 117 revisions really isn't a ton. So if you look over on the side over here, you'll actually see that revisions 94 through 107 are actually attributed to this certain person. In this case, it was actually me. So, you know, there was a huge chunk of little tiny revisions that were all sandwiched together or considered like one major revision. But it's a very nice thing where you can actually keep or hold that student more accountable. You can actually say, look, I can check all of your work on this, exactly what you've done to this document. And that at least kind of motivates them to do maybe a little more work than they would have done in the first place. Let me see if I can possibly confuse things a little bit more here and actually talk about CRPs from a different perspective. This time, instead of a CRP being a collaborative research project, I want you to think of it in terms of a collaborative response presentation. In this case right here, you're looking at what would be a slide presentation that I would use in my regular digital utilities for the teacher class. And all I do is I go through and I actually talk about digital utilities for the teacher. I have this skeleton of a presentation up on the screen. And I typically have all of my students in some sort of computer lab where they can type away and actually access this presentation right on their screen. So what I do is I assign each person a 2 to 3 minute block where they are actually responsible for being the response person, or what you would call a secretary. So as I'm actually teaching the lesson, I don't have a lot of content in my presentation. It's totally opposite of what you would see in a PowerPoint where all of the content is there. It's just the framework, and I have to make sure that the students are paying enough attention, or they need to make sure that they're paying enough attention, that they actually record the information that I'm talking about. So when we're finished with the lesson after 45 minutes or what have you, what has happened is that they have taken my framework, my skeleton of a presentation, and they have actually created my lesson plan for me. A collaborative response presentation. It's a wonderful way of keeping students on track, making sure that they're accountable, and giving them a little bit of ownership of the class. It's just a new twist on an old CRP.